And I just wanted to congratulate you on your excellent choice of choosing to do the iOS Coder course. Uh, the course says iOS, but strictly speaking, it's going to be a Swift course. Swift is the programming language that we're going to use. It's a very, very amazing language. I hope you're going to love it as much as I do. And Swift is used on different platforms for iOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, and it was open source. I think it was this year, or maybe it was last December. Wow, time's going by fast. Where it is now performant on a Linux machine. Um, this opens up a ton of doors, and it's really amazing thing. So, what is Swift? It's a general purpose compiled programming language, and it was developed for these different platforms. If you're unfamiliar with what compiled means, I've broken down a diagram to kind of help me describe what compiled means. The source code that you create, that you're going to write for this course, it's going to go through a compiler and get translated into bytecode so that it can run the instructions on a Linux and a Mac OS. Windows doesn't really count here. But that's basically what compiled means. Um, for this course, starting off, we wanted you to get you guys to read the basics, basic operators, strings, and characters. I'm going to go over very, very quickly. Basically the highlights of what's going on there. So here we have a playground, and I've defined some constants here, and this is a variable, and constants cannot be changed. And so here I have a St. Louis area code, 63130. I don't think that area code's ever going to change in the future, but if it does, in this particular example, you won't be able to change it. So if I just change it to, let's say, change it to 2, it's going to say it cannot assign to value because it's a let. It's a constant. Constants cannot be changed. The IDE is going to try to help you. It says, do you want to change it to var? It's basically giving you it's like, hey, did you mean to do this? Fix it? No, I didn't. I did mean to make it a let. Just giving an example. So the next thing is here's a var. This one can be changed. So let's say the heat index started out at 5 today, climbed up to 12. Is 10 the highest? I'm not really sure. Anyways, you can change that. Over here, you can see line by line the output, and this is just for playground. So a playground is really just for you to play, just kind of get used to the language, stuff like that. I personally don't use playgrounds in my day-to-day work. I use the full-blown IDE. I just find it more useful, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But this is your debugger down here. So it's going to let you know if you kind of like mess up. So heat index is 10. The reason why I put 0.0 is because you can only add doubles together. Swift is a strongly typed language. Every property you create, every constant, every variable that you create is going to need a type. And you can only add two types of the same type together, if that makes sense. So if I try to add 10 to the heat index, it's going to start complaining to me that, of course, it wasn't complaining because, I don't know, maybe they fixed that. But anyways, this is what I expected to see. You cannot add type int to type double. So this right here, I'm basically creating a new int object with the number 10, literally instantiating a new one. One of the cool things you can do is you can hit Apple and then click on this, jump to definition, and it's going to take you to what an int actually is. Technically, an int in Swift is a struct, and there's a bunch of different initialize patterns that you can use to initialize what an integer actually is, and that is a struct. We'll get into structs the next course. That's a little far beyond what I'm trying to show you, but basically you cannot add a double with an integer. So we'll just keep that as 10 and can continue on. The next thing that I wanted to show was Boolean types. There's things known as Booleans. So I'm going to go with Swift is super cool, and that is true. That is extremely true. So That is a Boolean type. You'll notice that I didn't have to put Boolean. I didn't have to define it like this. The reason why you don't have to do that is there's something called inferred types. Swift is smart enough to know that the right-hand side, it's going to figure out what kind of type it is. Usually, in most of the cases, it can. In some cases, it does need help. But for the most part, you can omit this part. And that is Swift being smart and inferring the types that you mean. So I can get rid of those. The other thing you can do is option click. So if you hold down the option key, your cursor turns into a little like a cross. You hover over something, it actually turns into a question mark. You click on it, you can see that it says it's a declaration, and it's of the int type. This is what I do to check the types as I'm coding. A lot of times you can create custom types. These are the types that Swift gives you, int, double, basic, stuff like that. You will be creating types a lot in your coding base. So I often will try to figure out kind of what type is inferred. So that is that. Back to this Boolean, Swift is super cool. So if Swift is super cool, then you're going to print, yay, I'm excited to take this course. Because I know you are. It's going to be awesome. Over here, you can see that the playground has evaluated that Swift is super cool, so it actually went into these brackets and it printed out, yeah, I'm excited to this course. And down here in this debugger, it did the same thing. Moving on, we've got string types. So let's just say like my name is Ryan, and for whatever reason, so basically what strings are they are a collection of characters. They are literally an array of characters, so you can actually iterate over your string. So you can say for character in name, that is deprecated. Yeah, Swift 4. Swift 4 is a little bit new to me, but let's see here. Yeah, so if I option click on this, this should show me that this is a character. And so if I print char, it'll, oh no, why? So Xcode will sometimes crash on you, and that's pretty cool. It takes a second to get back up and running, but just going back to this, I'm basically doing a for loop over the array name, and it should print out the characters, but I have a feeling it's not going to want to do that. Playgrounds are a little buggy. I'm just going to move on. So the next thing I wanted to talk about were optional values. Optionals basically means that the properties can be nil or literally nothing. So one thing I wanted to show you was, let's just say I have a string 1, and it is a string. And then I'll have string 2, and I'll also give it a type string. But I'm going to declare it as optional. This is how you declare an optional. You use a question mark. And so if I try to change string 1, which I should be allowed to do, it is a variable, set it as a new string, oops, that is going to work. So I haven't defined the actual value of string 1. All I've done is declared that it's going to be of type string, and so I can, on lines below it, I can actually define it. But what I can't do is I can't set it to nil. If I try to set it to nil, it's going to give me an error saying nil cannot be assigned to type string. So types have an additional kind of property. It's not really property. I can't think of the right term, but there's a different little attribute to it. where it could be nil. So this you cannot assign nil. String 2, however, because it has a question mark, you can assign nil. This will become more useful basically when you start your program. There's going to be cases where you're going to want a property defined already. So let's say this is like bad guy, like you're creating a game, and he hasn't been created yet. So your player is going through the world, hasn't encountered the bad guy yet. He's not in memory yet, and so he's actually going to be defaulted to he's nil. He hasn't been created in memory yet, and so when your good guy encounters him, you can go ahead and change his value from nil to Bowser, like from Mario, something like that. What you want to do? Oh my gosh, no. Okay, good. What you'll want to do when you're working with optionals is you're going to want to check to see if this actually is in memory. The way you do that is through something called unwrapping or optional chaining. The way you do that is you say if let, and you define a new variable. I'm just going to call it unwrapped bad guy is equal to this guy that I'm going to print bad guy exists or is doing bad things, basically. It is not going to go in there. But if I move this statement below after to where I defined him, so right here he's nil, it's not going to go into this condition. But here it will. And it's going to say a bad guy exists. This unwrapped bad guy, you can also print him too. So this is basically taking the bad guy value, which is optional. Question mark, click on it. It's of type string and it's optional. This guy, however, is of type string. It is no longer optional. And so when I use it within this block, whenever I print, he's guaranteed to be, in memory, basically. And so that's basically it. That's as far as I'm going to cover this this time. I'm going to uncomment this code to see if it won't crash. Hey, 4 times. And so I'm going to look at this, and it doesn't tell me much. That's cool. I was really hoping it would show me RYAN, because that's what it should do. No. Cool. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this session. The homework is going to be reading this material and then playing with playgrounds yourself. This will probably be the only assignment where you actually play with playgrounds. After this, we're going to get into the IDE. Really just want you to kind of do what I did, just write some code, play with it. Oh no, at least the console actually prints it out, so it actually looped through RYAN. That's interesting. Anyways, hope to see you guys on the next video. Thanks.